The stars looked different through the thick glass windows of the research ship Harmony. Dr. Hana Kim pressed her face against the cool surface and watched the alien vessels move through space like giant metal insects. Their ships were smooth and dark, with no visible weapons or engines. They just glided silently through the black void. "First contact protocol is ready, Dr. Kim," said Jin Lee from the communications station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, checking the translation software one more time. The universal translator is working well with their language patterns. Hana nodded and walked back to the center of the bridge. Captain Tae Park stood next to the main screen, watching 3 alien ships approach their position near the small moon. The moon had no name yet, just numbers and letters that scientists used. But today it would become famous as the place where humans first met the Velthari. They call themselves the Velthari Empire. Jin continued reading from his screen. Their leader wants to meet on the moon's surface. They say they have built a meeting place for us. "How long did it take them to build it?" asked Yuna Choi, the team's scientist. She was looking at her instruments with worry. "We've been traveling to this moon for 3 months, but they got here yesterday and already built something?" Hana felt a cold feeling in her stomach. The aliens had technology that could build structures in hours, not days or weeks like humans needed. But she was here to make peace, not to worry about their machines. "Let's go meet them," she said. "This is what we came here to do." The shuttle ride to the moon's surface was quiet. Hana looked at her small team. Besides herself, there was Captain Tae Park for security, Jin Lee for communications, and Yuna Choi to study any technology they might see. 4 humans representing all of Earth and its colonies. The alien building looked like a giant bubble made of silver metal. It sat on the gray rocks of the moon like a drop of water. As their shuttle landed nearby, Hana could see movement inside the transparent walls. The Velthari were waiting. "Remember," Hana told her team as they put on their spacesuits, "we're here to learn about each other. We want peace and friendship, but stay alert." The inside of the bubble was warm and filled with air that humans could breathe. The Velthari had somehow known exactly what humans needed. 3 alien figures stood waiting in the center of the room. They were tall, maybe 8 feet high, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished black metal. Their heads were triangle-shaped, with large compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. "Welcome, humans," said the center alien. The words came from a small device on its chest, not from its mouth. "I am Commander Vextai of the Velthari Empire. These are my advisors." Hana stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Dr. Hana Kim, representing Earth and all human colonies. We are honored to meet you." Commander Vextai made a sound that might have been laughter. "Honored? How interesting. Most species feel fear when they first see us. We prefer understanding to fear," Hana replied. She gestured to her team. "We brought scientists and communicators. We want to learn about your people and share knowledge about ours." "Share knowledge?" The alien's compound eyes seemed to sparkle. "What knowledge could humans possibly have that would interest the Velthari Empire?" Yuna stepped forward with a small device in her hands. "We've learned to grow food in space, heal diseases that once killed millions, and turn dead planets into living worlds. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and wars that nearly destroyed us. Each time we became stronger." The 3 aliens looked at each other. One of them made clicking sounds that the translator couldn't understand. Commander Vextai turned back to the humans. "Primitive achievements," he said. "Your species has barely left its home star system. You build with metal and plastic while we build with pure energy. Your fastest ships take months to travel between planets. Our slowest ships could cross your entire solar system in days." Captain Tae Park's hand moved closer to his weapon, but Hana shook her head slightly. She kept her voice calm and steady. "You're right that we're new to space travel," she said. "But we've learned something important during our short time among the stars. Every species we've met has something valuable to teach. Every culture has wisdom that others can learn from." "What could the mighty Velthari Empire possibly learn from humans?" asked Commander Vextai. His tone was mocking now. Hana felt her patience growing thin, but she forced herself to smile. "We could teach you about cooperation, about turning enemies into friends, about surviving when everything seems hopeless." The aliens made more clicking sounds. This time the translator picked up a few words. Amusing and children. Cooperation? Commander Vextai moved closer to Hana. "The Velthari Empire has conquered 47 star systems. We have enslaved 63 different species. We are the most powerful force in this galaxy. What need do we have for cooperation?" Now Hana's smile disappeared. She looked directly into the alien's compound eyes. "Because power built on fear and slavery never lasts. We've seen it on our own world many times. Empires that rule through force always fall." "Such brave words from such a weak species," said one of the other aliens. "Your ships are slow, your weapons are simple, your numbers are small. What threat could humans possibly be to anyone?" Hana was quiet for a long moment. Around her, she could feel her team growing tense. Finally, she spoke in a voice that was soft, but carried clearly through the bubble. "Let me tell you something about humans, Commander Vextai. We are the descendants of creatures who hunted mammoth with stone spears. We survived ice ages that froze most of our planet. We built civilizations on the ruins of old ones. We've faced extinction dozens of times, and always found a way to continue." She took a step toward the alien commander. "We've fought wars that killed millions, then learned to heal and forgive. We've split the atom, touched the face of our moon, and taught machines to think. Every time someone said something was impossible, we found a way to do it anyway." Commander Vextai seemed amused by her words. "Very impressive. But what does any of that matter against plasma cannons and gravity bombs?" "Because," Hana said quietly, "when you push humans into a corner, when you threaten everything we love, when you give us no choice but to fight or die, we become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We adapt. We overcome. And we remember." She looked at each of the three aliens in turn. "I hope we can be friends, Commander Vextai. I hope we can learn from each other and build something beautiful together. But if you force us to choose between peace and survival, we will always choose survival. And we're very, very good at surviving." The alien commander made the laughing sound again, louder this time. "What an amusing little speech. We shall remember these words when we decide what to do with your species." As the humans prepared to leave, Hana turned back to the aliens one final time. "Remember them well, Commander, because I won't warn you again." The silver bubble reflected the human's shuttle as it lifted off from the moon's surface. Inside, Commander Vextai was already making plans. 3 months passed after the first meeting on the nameless moon. The Velthari had built a massive space station near Jupiter, claiming they needed a place to study the solar system. Human leaders tried to see this as a good sign. Maybe the aliens really did want to learn about humanity. They were wrong. Captain Tay Park stood on the bridge of the military ship Guardian, watching alien vessels move through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The Velthari ships were scanning everything, taking detailed pictures, and mapping every human settlement. "Sir, we're getting reports from all our outer colonies," said his communications officer. "The aliens are demanding detailed information about our mining operations, our population numbers, and our defensive capabilities." Tay frowned at the reports scrolling across his screen. "They say they're conducting research for peaceful purposes. That's what they told the Mars colony yesterday. replied the officer. "Today they want exclusive mining rights to 3 of our biggest asteroid mines." On Earth, Dr. Hana Kim was reading similar reports in her office at the United Nations Space Command. The Velthari had started making demands, not requests. They wanted maps of all human settlements. They wanted samples of human technology. They wanted to place observation posts on human colonies. "They're not interested in friendship," she told the Council of World Leaders on her video screen. "They're gathering intelligence for something else." "But Dr. Kim," said the Secretary General, "they have superior technology. If we anger them, they could destroy us easily. Maybe we should give them what they want." Hana shook her head. "If we give them everything now, we'll have nothing left to bargain with later. And I don't think they plan to bargain at all." Her fears proved correct when Jin Lee rushed into her office with urgent news. "Doctor, the Velthari have called for another meeting. They want all human leaders to come to their space station." "All of them?" Hana asked. "Everyone. Military commanders, colony governors, even representatives from the mining companies. They say they have important announcements to make." The Velthari space station was huge, maybe 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. It hung in space near Jupiter like a dark, metal city. When the human shuttles approached, Hana could see hundreds of alien ships docked around the station. Inside the main meeting hall, 200 human representatives sat in chairs that seemed too small for them. The ceiling stretched high above. Their heads and the walls were covered in alien symbols that glowed with soft blue light. Commander Vextai entered the hall with 50 other aliens, but this time he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a figure that made all the humans gasp. It was twice as tall as Vextai, with 6 arms instead of 4 and compound eyes that seemed to look at everything at once. "Humans," Commander Vextai announced, "meet High Chancellor Mordak, Supreme Ruler of the Velthari Empire." High Chancellor Mordak moved to the center of the room. When he spoke, his voice was so deep it seemed to shake the air itself. "I have traveled many light years to see these humans that my commander has told me about," he said. "I must admit, I am disappointed." Murmurs spread through the human representatives. Hana felt her heart beating faster. "For 3 months, we have studied your species," the High Chancellor continued. "We have examined your technology, your cities, your colonies. We have watched how you live and how you work. And we have reached a conclusion." He paused and looked at the humans with all of his eyes. "You are children, playing with toys you do not understand." The murmurs grew louder. Some humans started to stand up, but Captain Tay Park signaled for them to stay calm. "Your fastest ships would take decades to reach the nearest star," High Chancellor Mordak said. "Your weapons could not scratch the hull of our smallest scout ship. Your colonies house millions while our cities house billions. You have mastered fire and metal, while we have mastered the forces that hold atoms together." Hana stood up slowly. "High Chancellor, we didn't come here to compete with you. We came to find common ground." The alien leader turned his massive head toward her. "Ah, Dr. Hana Kim. My commander told me about your amusing speech on the moon. Tell me, little human, what common ground could exist between gods and insects?" "We're not insects," Hana replied firmly. "We're intelligent beings with feelings, dreams, and rights, just like you." High Chancellor Mordak made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was deeper and more frightening than Commander Vexatai's amusement. "Rights? What rights do insects have? What rights do children have when adults are speaking?" He gestured with all 6 arms toward the human representatives. "You will give us what we require, or you will face the consequences." "What exactly are you requiring?" asked Captain Tay Park, standing up beside Hana. "Complete mining rights to all asteroids in this solar system," the High Chancellor said. "Detailed maps of all your colonies and military installations, samples of your biological and technological development, and complete access to your home planet for our research teams." The human representatives began talking loudly among themselves. Some looked angry, others looked scared. A few looked like they wanted to fight. "And if we refuse?" Hana asked. "Hi." Chancellor Mordak's compound eyes sparkled. "Then we will take what we need by force. It makes no difference to us. We have done this 47 times before with 47 other species. Some cooperated and were allowed to serve the Empire. Others resisted and were removed from existence." Yuna Choi stood up from her seat near the back. "You're talking about genocide." "I am talking about efficiency," the alien replied. "Useful species are preserved. Useless species are not. Which will you choose to be?" Hana looked around the room, at all the human faces. She saw fear, anger, confusion, and determination. These were representatives from every human colony, every nation, every walk of life. But in this moment, they were all just humans facing an impossible choice. "We need time to discuss this," she said. "You have 3 of your days," High Chancellor Mordak announced. "After that, we will assume you have chosen resistance." As the humans prepared to leave the station, Hana found herself walking beside Commander Vextai. The alien looked at her with what might have been curiosity. "You warned us on the moon about underestimating humans," he said. "But you see now how small you really are. Will you advise your leaders to cooperate?" Hana stopped walking and looked up at the tall alien. "Do you remember what I told you about humans and survival? Your species has survived many challenges on your homeworld," Vextai replied. "But you have never faced the Velthari Empire." "No," Hana said quietly. "We haven't. But you've never faced humans who have nothing left to lose." She walked away, leaving the alien commander standing alone in the corridor. Behind her, she could hear him making clicking sounds that the translator couldn't understand. 3 days later, the human representatives sent their answer to the Velthari Empire. It was simple and clear. No. High Chancellor Mordak received the message while standing on the bridge of his flagship. He turned to Commander Vextai and made the deep laughing sound again. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "It seems the humans have chosen to be useless." The first attack came at dawn on Mars. Yuna Choi was checking the atmospheric processors in Dome City 7 when the sky lit up with alien plasma fire. The beautiful pink Martian sunrise turned into streaks of green and blue energy that burned through the dome's protective shields like they were made of paper. "Emergency stations!" she shouted into her communication device. "All personnel to emergency stations!" But the people of Mars had been preparing for this moment ever since the meeting with High Chancellor Mordak. When the first alien ships appeared in the sky, they didn't run in panic. Instead, they moved with practiced efficiency to pre-planned positions. Above Mars, Captain Tay Park watched from the bridge of the Guardian as 30 Velthari warships destroyed the orbital defense platforms in minutes. The human ships fought, bravely, but their weapons barely scratched the alien hulls, while the Velthari plasma cannons cut through human armor like hot knives through butter. "Sir, we've lost contact with Defense Platform Alpha," reported his tactical officer. "Beta and Gamma are also gone. The aliens are moving toward the surface." Tay watched as his ships fell back toward Mars. They couldn't win this fight in open space, but maybe they could make the aliens pay for every meter of ground. "All ships, fall back to the colonies," he ordered. "Make them fight for every dome, every settlement, every building." On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Jin Lee was coordinating communications between the scattered human colonies when the second wave of alien ships arrived. The small research stations and mining outposts should have been easy targets for the Velthari fleet. They weren't. The humans had spent 3 months preparing for this day. Every settlement had hidden weapons, secret escape tunnels, and communication arrays that looked like ordinary equipment. When the aliens started bombing the surface installations, they found that destroying the visible buildings didn't stop the humans inside. "This is Jin Lee calling all stations," he broadcast from a hidden bunker deep under Europa's ice. "Remember the plan. Hit and run. Make them chase you. Never fight fair." The message went out to human colonies throughout the solar system using a communication network the aliens couldn't detect. It looked like normal mining equipment and maintenance systems, but Jin and his team had turned it into a military command structure that stretched from Earth to the outer planets. On the surface of Europa, Commander Vextai watched his ground troops advance toward what looked like an abandoned mining station. The humans had obviously fled when they saw the Velthari ships approaching. This would be easier than he expected. Then the mining station exploded. The blast was so powerful it shook the ground for kilometers around. When the smoke cleared, 50 Velthari soldiers were dead, and their advance vehicles were twisted pieces of metal scattered across the ice. "How did they do that?" asked one of his officers. "Our sensors showed the station was empty." Before Vextai could answer, small human figures appeared from hidden positions in the ice. They fired weapons that seemed to be made from mining equipment, then disappeared back into tunnels before the Velthari could return fire. "Sir, we're getting similar reports from all landing sites," the officer continued. "The humans aren't fighting us directly. They're using ambush tactics and improvised explosives." Vextai felt something he had never experienced before in 47 previous conquests: confusion. Other species either surrendered immediately or fought desperate battles they quickly lost. But the humans seemed to have a completely different approach to warfare. Back on Mars, Yuna Choi was proving just how dangerous a terraforming scientist could be when her home was under attack. She had spent years learning how to change the atmosphere of dead planets. Now she was using that knowledge to make life very difficult for the Velthari ground forces. "Quan, can you reroute the atmospheric processors?" she called to the colony's chief engineer. Quan Seo looked up from his control panel, his face covered in sweat and dust from the bombardment. "What do you need them to do?" "The Velthari breathe a nitrogen-oxygen mixture, but they need a specific pressure level," Yuna explained while checking her instruments. "If we can alter the local atmosphere in key areas, we can make their breathing equipment work overtime," Quan finished with a grin. "Maybe even overload their life support systems." Within hours, the air around major Velthari landing sites had been carefully poisoned with gases that were harmless to humans, but deadly to the aliens. When Velthari soldiers removed their helmets for even a few seconds, they started gasping and choking. On Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, the human colonists had an even more creative approach to defense. The moon's thick atmosphere and methane. Lakes had always made it a challenging place to live. Now, those same challenges became weapons. The Velthari ships that landed on Titan found themselves sinking into what looked like solid ground, but was actually methane snow covering deep lakes of liquid hydrocarbon. When they tried to use their energy weapons, the methane atmosphere caught fire, creating explosions that damaged their own ships. "The humans must have known this would happen," Commander Vextai reported to High Chancellor Mordak. "They led us into a trap using their own planet's environment." "Impossible," the High Chancellor replied from his flagship. "These primitives don't have the intelligence for such complex planning." But the evidence was everywhere. On every human world, in every settlement, the Velthari were facing resistance they had never encountered before. The humans weren't trying to win battles in the traditional sense. Instead, they were making the occupation as costly and difficult as possible. Dr. Hana Kim was coordinating the overall resistance from a hidden command center deep under the Rocky Mountains on Earth. Reports were coming in from across the solar system, and the pattern was clear. "They expected us to either surrender or fight like every other species they've conquered," she told the Emergency Council of World Leaders. "But we're doing neither." "Our casualties are heavy," reported the military commander. "We've lost most of our orbital defenses and the aliens control the space around our colonies." "But they don't control the colonies themselves," Hana pointed out. Every hour they spend fighting us is an hour they're not expanding to other star systems. Every soldier they lose fighting humans is one less soldier to use against the next species they encounter. The real shock for the Velthari came when they discovered that humans were actually studying and copying their technology while fighting them. Quan Seo and engineering teams throughout the colonies were analyzing every piece of alien equipment they could find. "Look at this," Quan told Yuna as he showed her a damaged Velthari plasma rifle. "Their weapons are more powerful than ours, but they're also more complex. They have 17 different safety systems and require rare elements we don't have on most planets." "What does that mean for us?" Yuna asked. "It means they can't easily repair or replace their equipment if we can disrupt their supply lines," Quan explained. "And if we can figure out how to make simpler versions of their weapons." Within weeks, human engineers had created crude but effective copies of Velthari plasma weapons using materials found in ordinary mining equipment. The weapons weren't as powerful as the originals, but they could damage alien ships and kill alien soldiers. Commander Vextai stood in the ruins of what had been a human mining facility on Ceres, the largest asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. His forces had taken the facility after 6 hours of fighting, but victory felt strange. "Sir, we've secured the area," reported his lieutenant. "But the humans destroyed all the mining equipment before they retreated, and they took all the refined metals with them." Vextai looked around at the empty buildings and broken machinery. "Where did they go?" "Unknown, sir. They seem to have disappeared into the asteroid's tunnel system. Our sensors can't track them through all that metal and rock." This was the pattern everywhere the Velthari went. They could destroy human installations, but they couldn't capture intact facilities or hold territory for long. The humans would return as soon as the aliens moved on to other targets. High Chancellor Mordak was growing impatient. The conquest that should have taken days was stretching into weeks, and his forces were spread thin across the human solar system. "Commander Vextai," he said during their daily communication, "explain to me why these primitives are still resisting. Where is their government? Where are their surrender negotiations?" "High Chancellor, the humans don't seem to have a single government we can defeat," Vextai replied. "Each colony operates independently. When we destroy their command centers, new ones appear. When we kill their leaders, others take their place." "Then kill them all," Mordak ordered. "Use the planetary bombardment weapons. Burn their worlds until nothing remains." But even that wasn't working as planned. Every time the Velthari prepared for a major bombardment, human ships would appear from hidden bases and attack their fleet. The humans couldn't win these space battles, but they could force the aliens to choose between defending themselves and attacking colonies. 3 months after the invasion began, Commander Vextai received a message that made his compound eyes widen in disbelief. It was from Dr. Hana Kim, broadcast on all Velthari communication frequencies. 6 months into the invasion, something impossible was happening in the human solar system. The primitives were getting better at war. Quan Seo stood in the engineering bay of a captured Velthari scout ship, surrounded by tools that would have been considered impossible technology just a year ago. The alien ship had been damaged in a raid on Europa, and instead of destroying it, the humans had dragged it to a hidden repair facility deep in the asteroid belt. "The power coupling goes here," he explained to a group of human engineers gathered around the alien machinery. "But see how they've designed it? It only works with their specific energy crystals, very efficient but completely dependent on their supply chain." "What if we replace the crystals with our fusion cells?" asked one of the engineers. Quan smiled and held up a device that looked like a hybrid between human and alien technology. "Already tried it. Works even better than their original design. We can power this ship for months without their special crystals." This was happening all over the solar system. Human engineers, scientists, and even ordinary colonists were taking apart Velthari equipment and rebuilding it with human modifications. The aliens had better technology, but humans had something the Velthari had never encountered: the ability to improve anything they touched. On Mars, Una Choi was leading, a team that had turned atmospheric processing into a weapon of war. The Velthari controlled the skies above the planet, but the air itself had become hostile to them. "We've created pockets of modified atmosphere around all their major bases," she reported to Dr. Hana Kim during their daily communication. "Their soldiers can't operate effectively without full environmental suits, and those suits slow them down." "What about their vehicles?" Hana asked from her command center on Earth. "That's the beautiful part," Una replied with satisfaction. "Their vehicles use atmospheric intake for cooling. When they try to operate in our modified air, their engines overheat. We've disabled more alien vehicles with bad air than with explosives." But the real breakthrough came when Captain Tay Park's forces captured an intact Velthari destroyer during a raid on one of their supply depots. The ship was only lightly damaged, and human engineers swarmed over it like ants studying a fallen giant. "This is incredible," Quan told Tay as they walked through the alien ship's corridors. "Their technology is advanced, but it's also incredibly specialized. Every system is designed to work perfectly with every other system." "What does that mean for us?" Tay asked. "It means they can't adapt quickly when something goes wrong," Quan explained. "Look at this control panel. It's designed for creatures with 4 arms and compound eyes, but watch what happens when we modify it for human use." He showed Tay a section of the ship where human technicians had rewired the alien controls. Instead of the complex multi-armed interface the Velthari used, humans had created simple switches and displays that one person could operate easily. "It's not just easier for us to use," Quan continued. "It's actually more efficient. The Velthari over-engineered everything. We've simplified their systems and made them work better." Within days, the captured destroyer was flying missions against its former owners. But it wasn't just the technology that had been improved. The entire ship had been modified to take advantage of human tactics and strategies. Jin Lee had installed a communication system that allowed the ship to coordinate with hidden human bases throughout the solar system. Una had modified the life support to create zones of poisonous atmosphere that could be used against boarding parties. Quan had rewired the weapons to fire faster and more accurately than the original design allowed. "This is impossible," Commander Vextai said, as he watched the modified human ship destroy 2 Velthari escorts near Jupiter. "They've had that ship for less than a month. How did they learn to use it so quickly?" His tactical officer pulled up sensor readings on the main screen. "Sir, it's not just that they learned to use it. They've changed it. The weapon signatures are different, the engine emissions don't match our databases, and it's moving in ways our ships aren't designed to move." Vextai studied the data with growing concern. In 47 previous conquests, captured alien technology had always been useless to the Velthari because other species couldn't understand or operate it properly. But humans seemed to understand Velthari technology better than the Velthari themselves. "Send a message to High Chancellor Mordak," he ordered. "Tell him we have a problem." The problem was bigger than Commander Vextai realized. All across the solar system, humans were not just copying Velthari technology. They were improving it, combining it with human innovations, and creating hybrid systems that worked better than anything either species had developed alone. Dr. Hana Kim stood in the main laboratory of the hidden research facility where human scientists were studying every piece of alien equipment they could get their hands on. The room was filled with workbenches covered in a mix of human tools and alien devices. "Show me what you've learned," she told the lead scientist. "The Velthari are definitely more advanced than us," the scientist began. "But their advancement went in a very specific direction. They focused on power and efficiency, but they never learned to make things simple or adaptable." He picked up a Velthari plasma rifle and a human-made copy sitting side by side on the workbench. "Their weapon is more powerful, but it has 43 moving parts and requires 5 different types of ammunition. Our version has 8 moving parts and uses standard fusion cells that we can make in any engineering shop. What about reliability? Hana asked. Their weapon works perfectly under ideal conditions, the scientist replied. But if anything goes wrong, if it gets damaged or dirty or too hot, it stops working completely. Our version keeps working, even when half the components are destroyed. This was the pattern everywhere humans encountered Velthari technology. The aliens had created beautiful, efficient machines that worked perfectly in controlled environments. But humans lived in a universe where nothing was controlled, where equipment had to work when it was broken, dirty, overheated, and falling apart. The real shock came when Quan Seo's engineering teams began modifying captured Velthari ships not just to work with human technology, but to work better than they had before. The aliens had designed their ships for their specific physiology and tactics. Humans redesigned them for effectiveness. "Look at this," Quan told Captain Tay Park as they stood in the engine room of another captured alien vessel. The Velthari power their ships with these massive energy crystals that provide enormous amounts of power. But they also make the ships heavy and slow to maneuver. "So you replaced them?" Tay asked. "Better than that," Quan replied with a grin. "We kept the crystals for main power, but added human fusion reactors as backup systems. Now the ship has more power than before, but if the main crystals get damaged, we can keep fighting on fusion power alone." The modifications weren't just about technology. Humans had also changed how the ships were operated. Velthari vessels were designed for crews of hundreds, with complex hierarchies and specialized roles. Human-modified ships could be operated by crews of dozens, with each person trained to handle multiple systems. "The efficiency improvement is remarkable," Jin Lee reported during a staff meeting. "We can operate their ships with 1/10 the crew they need, and our smaller crews can make decisions and adapt to changing situations much faster than their larger, more specialized teams." But the biggest advantage wasn't technological at all. It was psychological. Yuna Choi discovered this when she was interrogating a captured Velthari soldier. The alien had been found unconscious in the wreckage of his ship after a failed raid on Titan. "Why do you keep fighting?" the alien asked her through a translator. "You must know you cannot win. Our empire spans 47 star systems. Your species controls only one." "You're right," Yuna replied calmly. "We can't beat your entire empire, but we don't need to." The alien's compound eyes reflected confusion. "What do you mean?" "We just need to make conquering us more expensive than leaving us alone," Yuna explained. "Every day you spend fighting us, your other enemies get stronger. Every ship you lose here is a ship you can't use to defend your other territories. Every soldier who dies fighting humans is a soldier who can't be used to keep your empire together." The alien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain. "But you are primitives. Your technology is inferior. How can you hope to resist indefinitely?" Yuna smiled. "Because we learn. Every piece of your technology we capture makes us stronger. Every tactic you use against us teaches us something new. Every day this war continues, the gap between our capabilities gets smaller." She stood up to leave, then turned back to the alien soldier. "Your empire conquered 47 other species because they fought you the way you expected them to fight. We're not doing that. We're fighting you the way humans fight, and humans have been fighting for survival since before we had language." The captured alien was still thinking about her words hours later when Velthari rescue ships found him. When he was brought before Commander Vextai, he had a question that his commander couldn't answer. "Sir, what happens if we can't conquer them? What happens if they keep getting stronger while we get weaker?" 1 year after the invasion began, High Chancellor Mordak received a report that made him destroy his command chair in rage. The humans had just captured an entire Velthari supply convoy and were using the ships to attack other Velthari positions. "Explain." "To me," he demanded of Commander Vextai, "how primitives with Stone Age technology are flying our ships better than we do." Vextai looked at the battle reports with tired compound eyes. He had been fighting humans for 12 months, and nothing made sense anymore. High Chancellor, they have modified our ships beyond recognition. Our sensors can barely identify them as Velthari technology. Show me, Mordak ordered. The main screen displayed footage from a recent battle near Saturn. A ship that had once been a Velthari cruiser was moving through space in ways that should have been impossible. It turned sharply, accelerated rapidly, and fired weapons that looked completely different from standard Velthari armaments. They removed most of the armor to reduce weight, Vextai explained. Then they added human maneuvering thrusters and replaced our plasma cannons with hybrid weapons that fire faster and use less power. The ship must be fragile without proper armor, Mordak observed. Yes, but they don't fight like we do, Vextai replied. They don't try to survive direct hits. Instead, they move so quickly that we can't hit them at all. And when we do manage to damage one of their ships, they repair it with whatever materials they can find. The footage showed exactly what Vextai meant. The human-modified ship had sections that were clearly repaired with metal that didn't match the original hull. Some weapon mounts looked like they had been welded on by hand. The entire vessel looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. But it was destroying Velthari ships with frightening efficiency. How many of our vessels have they captured? Mordak asked. 43 confirmed, High Chancellor. But we believe the actual number is higher. They have learned to modify captured ships so extensively that we can't always recognize them. On Europa, Captain Taypark was proving just how dangerous a human with access to alien technology could be. His fleet of captured and modified Velthari ships was striking at alien positions throughout the outer solar system. Target the supply ships first, he told his tactical officer as they approached a Velthari staging area near Neptune. Without supplies, their combat ships become floating metal coffins. Sir, there are 12 enemy vessels guarding the supply convoy, the officer reported. Our 6 ships are outnumbered 2-1. Tay smiled grimly. They're outnumbered by ships. But we have more humans per ship than they have aliens, and humans fight differently. The battle that followed would have been impossible with original Velthari technology. The human-modified ships split up and attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. When the aliens tried to respond to one threat, 2 more would appear from different angles. Human tactical doctrine is completely unpredictable, reported a Velthari commander as his ship took damage from weapons that seemed to fire from empty space. They use cloaking devices we didn't know they possessed. They don't have cloaking devices, his tactical officer replied in confusion. They're hiding behind asteroids and using the natural magnetic fields to mask their signatures. Since when do primitives understand magnetic field manipulation? Since they captured our science vessels and reverse-engineered our sensor technology, sir. The human victory was complete. All 12 Velthari ships were either destroyed or captured, and the supply convoy fell into human hands. But the real victory was what happened next. Instead of simply using the captured supplies, the humans shared them with Velthari prisoners who had agreed to work with the resistance. Kwanseo had discovered something that shocked everyone. Some aliens were willing to switch sides. This is unprecedented, Dr. Hana Kim told the resistance leadership during their daily meeting. In over a year of fighting, we've captured almost 2,000 Velthari soldiers. Nearly 300 of them have asked to join our side. Why would they do that? Asked Jin Lee from his communication center. Because we treat prisoners better than their own empire treats soldiers, Hana replied. We give them medical care, decent food, and respect. The Velthari Empire considers soldiers who get captured to be failures who deserve death. Yuna Choi had been working with these defecting aliens to understand Velthari technology and psychology. What she learned changed everything about how humans approached the war. The Velthari Empire isn't really unified, she explained to a group of human commanders. It's held together by fear and rigid hierarchy. Individual aliens are actually intelligent and creative, but their society punishes independent thinking. What? Does that mean for us? Asked Captain Tay Park. It means we can offer them something their empire never has. Freedom to think for themselves, Una replied. And when they start thinking for themselves, they realize that their empire is built on lies. The proof came when a Velthari engineer named Kexran approached human forces with an offer to trade information for protection. He had been working on Velthari weapons systems and had discovered something that terrified him. The Empire plans to use world-killer weapons against your colonies, he told Una through a translator. Not just to defeat you, but to make an example for other species who might resist in the future. World-killer weapons? Una asked. Devices that can crack a planet's core and destroy it completely, Kexran explained. The Empire has used them before when conventional conquest takes too long. This intelligence changed everything. Dr. Hana. Kim called an emergency meeting of all human resistance leaders. We're no longer fighting for victory, she announced. We're fighting for survival. If we can't stop their world-killer weapons, Earth and all our colonies will be destroyed. But Kexran had more information to share. The weapons require specific, rare elements to function, he told them. Elements that are only found in certain star systems. If you could disrupt their supply lines, Quan Seo immediately understood the implications. We can't just defend anymore. We need to go on the offensive. Attack their supply lines outside our solar system? Captain Tay Park asked. That would require ships capable of interstellar travel. We have their ships, Quan pointed out. And now we have aliens willing to help us modify them for long-range missions. What followed was the most ambitious engineering project in human history. Working with defecting Velthari scientists and engineers, humans began modifying captured alien vessels for deep space missions. The goal was to create ships that could travel to other star systems and attack Velthari supply bases. The original Velthari ships are designed for short-range tactical missions, explained Kexran as he worked alongside Quan in the engineering bay. But if we combine their faster-than-light engines with human life support systems and adaptive technology, we get ships that can operate independently for months or even years, Quan finished. Ships that can strike at the Empire's heart instead of just defending our own territory. The first long-range human strike force launched 6 weeks later. 5 heavily modified Velthari ships, crewed by humans and defecting aliens, disappeared into the vast darkness between stars. Their mission was to find and destroy the facilities that produced components for world-killer weapons. Commander Vextai watched the human ships leave the solar system on his long-range sensors. He should have felt relieved that the humans were finally running away. Instead, he felt a cold dread in his chest. "Sir, should we pursue them?" asked his tactical officer. "With what ships?" Vextai replied bitterly. "Half our fleet is damaged. A quarter of our personnel are dead or captured, and now we have aliens fighting alongside humans against their own empire. High Chancellor Mordak is demanding a status report," the officer continued. Vextai looked at the report he had been trying to write for hours. How could he explain that the primitive humans had turned a simple conquest into a war that was spreading across multiple star systems? How could he tell the High Chancellor that Velthari soldiers were defecting to fight alongside their former enemies? "Tell the High Chancellor that the humans are no longer contained to their home system," he said finally. "Tell him that they now have interstellar capability and are carrying the war to other worlds." "Sir, how is that possible? They didn't have faster-than-light travel when we arrived." "They do now," Vextai replied grimly. "They learned it from us." 2 months later, reports began arriving from Velthari colonies in distant star systems. Human ships were attacking supply convoys, destroying mining operations, and somehow convincing local alien populations to rebel against imperial rule. High Chancellor Mordak realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just defending their own world anymore. They were liberating others. "Prepare the world-killer weapon," he ordered his fleet commanders. Target the human homeworld. End this before it spreads further. But as the massive weapon began charging its devastating power, sensors detected something that made every Velthari officer freeze in terror. A fleet of ships was approaching. Ships that registered as Velthari technology, but moved like human vessels. "High Chancellor," reported the tactical officer. "We're receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet." The counteroffensive began at exactly 0800 Earth Standard Time on a Tuesday morning. Captain Tay Park led the first wave of the attack from the bridge of a ship that had once been the pride of the Velthari fleet. Now it flew human colors and carried a crew that was half human, half defecting aliens. "All ships, this is Captain Park," he broadcast to the massive fleet surrounding Earth. "Remember what we're fighting for. Not conquest, not revenge, but the right of every species to be free." Behind him, Kexaran, the Velthari engineer, worked alongside Jin Lee at the communication station. The sight would have been impossible 2 years ago. Natural enemies cooperating to fight against the empire that had oppressed both their peoples. "Human ships. We have target confirmation," Jin reported. "Velthari staging areas around Jupiter, and Saturn are preparing to retreat." "Don't let them," Tay ordered. "Those ships contain information about other conquered species. We need that data." The battle for the outer solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with impossible speed and coordination, striking at Velthari, positions from multiple directions simultaneously. But they weren't just using superior tactics. They were using superior technology. Quan Seo had spent months working with defecting Velthari scientists to create hybrid weapons that combined the best of both civilizations. Human creativity and adaptability merged with alien advanced physics to produce tools of war that neither species could have built alone. "Target their command ship," Yuna Choi called out from her position at the science station. She had become an expert at analyzing Velthari formations and identifying their weaknesses. "If we can capture their central computer, we'll have navigation data for every Velthari colony in this sector." The battle was fierce but brief. Velthari forces that had once seemed invincible now found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by the very species they had dismissed as primitive. Worse, many of their own soldiers were refusing to fight. Commander Vextai watched from his flagship as another Velthari destroyer surrendered to human forces without firing a shot. The crew had mutinied against their officers and was asking for protection from the human fleet. "This is impossible," his tactical officer reported. "Half our ships are surrendering before we even engage the humans. The other half are being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist." "The weapons exist because we taught them how to build them," Vextai replied bitterly. "Every piece of technology we brought to this system has been turned against us." "Sir, we're receiving a personal message for you from the human fleet." "Put it through." Dr. Hana Kim appeared on his screen, but she was no longer the diplomatic scientist he had met 2 years ago. Now she wore the uniform of a military commander, and her eyes carried the weight of decisions that had saved or doomed entire worlds. "Commander Vexatai," she said, "I want to offer you the same choice we've offered your soldiers. Surrender now, and you'll be treated with dignity and respect. Continue fighting, and you'll be destroyed along with the empire you serve." "You think you can defeat the entire Velthari empire with a few captured ships?" Vextai asked. "We're not trying to defeat your empire," Hana replied. "We're trying to free it. Every system we liberate, every species we help throw off Velthari rule, makes us stronger and you weaker." The truth of her words was already becoming clear. Reports were arriving from across Velthari space of rebellions, uprisings, and human-led liberation movements. The primitive species that was supposed to be conquered in days had somehow become the spark that set the entire galaxy on fire. "Your empire is built on fear," Hana continued. "But we've shown that the Velthari can be beaten. Once that knowledge spreads, How long do you think your other subjects will remain loyal? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A massive Velthari fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, not to attack Earth, but to join the human side. Admiral Torvak, one of the Empire's most respected military leaders, had defected with an entire battle group. High Chancellor, Mordok, he announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast. I have served the Empire for 40 years. I have conquered worlds and enslaved species in the name of Velthari superiority. But the humans have shown me something I never knew existed. An alternative. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by officers who had chosen to follow him into rebellion. I will no longer serve an empire that treats its own soldiers as expendable and other species as insects. From this day forward, my fleet fights for freedom. The defection of Admiral Torvak was the signal that resistance movements throughout Velthari space had been waiting for. Within days, 17 different species launched coordinated uprisings against their imperial occupiers. And at the center of it all were human ships, human tactics, and human philosophy. We're not trying to replace the Velthari Empire with a human empire, Dr. Hana Kim explained to the growing coalition of rebel species. We're trying to create something that has never existed before, a galactic community where every species has a voice. The idea was revolutionary. For thousands of years, the galaxy had been dominated by empires that ruled through force. But humans were proposing something different. Cooperation instead of conquest, trade instead of tribute, friendship instead of fear. Quan Sio was at the center of making this vision reality. Working with scientists and engineers from dozens of different species, he was developing technologies that could benefit everyone rather than just giving military advantages to one group. Look at this. He showed Yuna as they worked in a laboratory that buzzed with activity from beings of 6 different species. Velthari energy crystals, Zorani biocomputers, Zothan metalworking techniques, and human adaptive engineering. Together we can build things that none of us could create alone. The results were astounding. Medical technologies that could heal injuries that had been fatal for millennia. Communication systems that allowed instant translation between any known languages. Manufacturing techniques that could produce goods more efficiently than the biggest imperial factories. But the IA real breakthrough wasn't technological, it was social. For the first time in galactic history, reported Jin Lee from his new position as Director of Interspecies Communications, we have former enemies working together voluntarily. Velthari engineers are teaching humans about faster-than-light travel. Human doctors are sharing medical techniques with Zorani healers. Zothan miners are showing everyone new ways to extract resources without damaging planets. The transformation was happening so quickly that even the humans were amazed. Species that had been at war with each other for centuries were finding common ground in their opposition to imperial rule. Technologies that had been jealously guarded secrets were being shared freely to strengthen the growing alliance. High Chancellor Mordak watched these developments from his throne ship with growing desperation. In less than 2 years, the human infection had spread to every corner of his empire. Species that had been loyal subjects for generations were declaring independence. Velthari officers were defecting in increasing numbers. Even his own advisors were beginning to question the wisdom of continuing the war. High Chancellor, reported his intelligence officer, we've lost contact with 12 more systems this week. The rebellions are spreading faster than we can respond to them. Then respond faster, Mordak ordered. Deploy the world killer weapons against the rebel systems. Make examples that will terrify the others back into submission. Sir, we've tried that. When we destroyed the Kepler system as an example, it only made the other rebellions more determined. They see it as proof that the Empire cannot be reformed, only destroyed. Mordak realized with growing horror that he was facing something the Velthari Empire had never encountered, an idea more powerful than fear. The humans hadn't just defeated his military forces, they had infected the galaxy with the concept that freedom was possible. "Prepare my personal fleet," he ordered. "If the Empire is to survive, the human homeworld must be completely destroyed, not just conquered, obliterated so thoroughly that no trace remains." But as his most powerful ships began charging their ultimate weapons, a new voice joined the Galactic Communication Network. It was Kexron, the Velthari engineer who had first warned humans about the world-killer weapons. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced, "I have news that will end this war forever. High Chancellor Mordak is preparing to use planet-killing, weapons not just against Earth, but against any world that opposes him. He plans to commit genocide on a scale never seen before." The revelation triggered something that the High Chancellor had never expected. His own people turned against him. Velthari civilians, horrified by the prospect of galactic genocide, began sabotaging their own military installations. Velthari officers refused orders to prepare world-killer weapons. Even his personal guard began to question their loyalty. Dr. Hana Kim received a message that changed everything. It came from Commander Vextai, transmitted from the Velthari flagship itself. "Dr. Kim," he said, "I am prepared to surrender my command to human forces, but you must act quickly. Mordak has lost his mind and is preparing to destroy everything, rather than accept defeat. The galaxy needs your help." High Chancellor Mordak stood alone on the bridge of his massive flagship, the Imperial Fist watching the galaxy burn around him. Reports flooded in from every corner of Velthari space, rebellions, defections, entire fleets switching sides to join the human-led coalition. His empire, built over thousands of years, was crumbling in a matter of months. "Sir," his remaining tactical officer reported nervously, "the world-killer weapon is fully charged and ready to fire. Target coordinates are locked on the human homeworld." Mordak looked at the planet Earth through the main viewing screen. Such a small blue world to have caused so much destruction. From this distance, it looked peaceful and harmless. He found it hard to believe that the end of his empire had begun on that tiny sphere. "Fire the weapon," he ordered. "Destroy them all." But before his officer could execute the command, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. On the tactical display, dozens of new contacts appeared around the Imperial Fist. Ships were materializing out of faster-than-light travel directly around the Velthari flagship. "Impossible," Mordak breathed. "How did they get so close without being detected?" The answer came from Captain Tay Park's voice over the communication system. "Because your own people told us exactly where you would be, High Chancellor, and they gave us the access codes to get through your defenses." On the main screen, Mordak could see the approaching human fleet. But these weren't the primitive ships that had first met his forces 2 years ago. These vessels combined the best. Technology from a dozen different species, all working together under human leadership. "You're surrounded, High Chancellor," came Dr. Hana Kim's voice. "Your own officers have locked you out of the weapon controls. It's over." Mordak spun around to look at his bridge crew. Every single officer was standing with their hands away from their control panels. His tactical officer held up his hands to show that he had made no attempt to fire the world-killer weapon. "Mutiny," Mordak hissed. "You dare commit mutiny against your High Chancellor?" Commander Vextai entered the bridge with a squad of Velthari soldiers, but instead of protecting their leader, they moved to restrain him. "It's not mutiny," Vextai said calmly. "It's evolution. We're choosing to be better than what we were." "You're choosing to be weak," Mordak raged as the soldiers held his arms. "The Empire was strong. We ruled the galaxy." "We ruled through fear and oppression," Vextai replied. "The humans showed us there was another way, a better way." Through the viewing screen, they could see small shuttles approaching from the human fleet. Dr. Hana Kim was coming aboard the Imperial Fist to accept the surrender of the Velthari Empire. As she walked onto the bridge with a small escort of humans and defecting aliens, Mordak looked at her with hatred burning in his compound eyes. "You've destroyed everything," he said. "Thousands of years of civilization, gone because of your primitive ideas about freedom and cooperation." Hana looked at the former High Chancellor with something that surprised him. Pity. "We haven't destroyed civilization," she said. "We've freed it from the cage you built around it." "The galaxy will fall into chaos without imperial rule," Mordak continued. "Species will war against each other, planets will be destroyed, technology will be lost. You have no idea what you've unleashed." "Maybe," Hana admitted. "Freedom is messy and unpredictable, but it's better than the alternative." She gestured toward the main screen, where ships from dozens of different species could be seen working together in the combined fleet. "Look around you, Mordak. Former enemies are cooperating. Species that have never met before are sharing technology and knowledge. Your empire prevented this kind of cooperation for centuries. Because cooperation is impossible between different species," Mordak shouted. "We tried peaceful contact once thousands of years ago. It led to wars that nearly destroyed the galaxy. Only imperial rule brought stability." Quan Seo, who had been quietly examining the world killer weapon controls, looked up from his work. "You're wrong," he said. "The wars happened because each species tried to dominate the others. We're not doing that. We're building something where everyone has an equal voice." "Impossible," Mordak repeated. "Some species are naturally superior to others. Some are meant to rule, others to serve. That is the natural order." "The natural order," said Yuna Choi as she entered the bridge with her scientific team, "is cooperation. Every ecosystem on every planet works because different species find ways to help each other survive. Competition exists, but so does mutual aid." She pulled up holographic displays showing data from across the galaxy. "Look at what we've accomplished in just 2 years of cooperation. Medical advances that would have taken centuries under imperial rule. Technologies that benefit everyone instead of just the ruling class. Peaceful solutions to conflicts that your empire would have solved with violence." Mordak stared at the data with disbelief. Species that had been bitter enemies under imperial rule were now working together on joint projects. Technologies that had been restricted to the ruling class were being shared freely. Planets that had been strip-mined to feed the imperial war machine were being restored to health. "This cannot last," he said desperately. "When the immediate threat of the empire is gone, they will turn on each other. You will see." "Maybe some will," Hana agreed, "but others won't. And each success will make the next cooperation easier." Jin. Lee approached with a communication device. "Dr. Kim, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. 43 systems have declared independence from the Empire and requested to join the Galactic Council. 17 more are holding referendums on whether to remain under Imperial rule or join the free systems." "A Galactic Council?" Mordak asked with scorn. "How will you make decisions? How will you maintain order? Different species have different needs, different values, different goals. The same way humans learn to cooperate despite our differences," Hana replied, "through discussion, compromise, and respect for each other's rights. Humans are one species from one world," Mordak pointed out. "You're talking about hundreds of species from thousands of worlds. Which makes it more challenging," Hana acknowledged, "but also more rewarding. Every species brings something unique to the community. Every world offers new perspectives and solutions to old problems." Admiral Torvok, the defecting Velthari commander, entered the bridge with reports from across the galaxy. "The transition is happening faster than we hoped," he told Hana. "Most worlds are choosing peaceful independence. The few that want to maintain imperial rule are being allowed to do so as long as they don't threaten their neighbors." "You're allowing imperial worlds to continue existing?" Mordak asked in surprise. "We're not trying to force our way of life on anyone," Hana explained. "If some species genuinely prefer imperial rule, that's their choice. But they can't impose that choice on others. This concept seemed to confuse Mordak more than anything else. But if you don't force everyone to accept your system, how do you maintain control? We don't, Hana said simply. Control isn't the goal. Freedom is. As if to prove her point, a message came through from one of the remaining Imperial worlds. The governor was requesting a peaceful meeting to discuss possible trade agreements with the new Galactic Council, even though his world had chosen to remain under Imperial rule. You see, Hana told Mordak, even your supporters are choosing cooperation over conflict. But the former High Chancellor wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at displays showing the galaxy transforming around him. Trade routes that had been restricted by Imperial decree were opening up. Scientific information that had been classified was being shared freely. Species that had never been allowed to communicate were forming new alliances and friendships. This is not how the galaxy is supposed to work, he said quietly. No, Hana agreed. It's how the galaxy wants to work, when it's free to choose. Quan Seo had finished his examination of the World Killer weapon. The weapon is completely disabled, he reported. But more importantly, we've downloaded all the technical specifications. We can make sure these devices are never used again. What will you do with me? Mordak asked, his voice hollow and defeated. Hana looked at the alien who had tried to destroy her species and everything she cared about. That's up to your own people to decide, she said, but whatever happens, you'll be treated fairly and humanely. Even after everything I've done? Even after everything you've done? That's what separates us from the empire you built. As Velthari, guards led Mordak away. He turned back one final time. You think you've won, Dr. Kim, but you've only started the hardest part. Building something is always more difficult than destroying it. You're right, Hana replied. But that's exactly why it's worth doing. Outside the Imperial Fist, the combined fleet of free worlds was already beginning to disperse. Ships were heading back to their home systems to begin the complex work of building a new galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. 5 years after the fall of the Velthari Empire, Dr. Hana Kim stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive space facility that had become the heart of the new Galactic Council. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species docking and departing, carrying diplomats, traders, scientists, and tourists between the stars. Hard to believe it all started with a warning nobody wanted to hear, said Captain Tay Park as he joined her at the viewing window. He wore the uniform of the Galactic Defense Force, a military organization dedicated to protecting member worlds from external threats and helping settle disputes peacefully. They listened eventually, Hana replied with a smile. It just took a war to get their attention. Below them in the station's central hub, beings from across the galaxy were going about their daily business. Velthari engineers worked alongside human technicians to maintain the station's systems. Zerani doctors shared medical techniques with colleagues from 6 different species. Zothan artists displayed their work in galleries that attracted visitors. From every corner of known space, the morning report, said Jin Lee as he approached with a data pad. As Director of Interspecies Communications, he coordinated information flow between the Council's 127 member worlds. 3 more systems have applied for membership this month. The hegemony of Kalar wants to establish trade agreements, and we've received a request for mediation in a border dispute between the Nexus Federation and the free colonies of Rigel. Any problems? Hana asked as she reviewed the reports. Nothing major. There was a minor trade disagreement between the metalworkers of Zothan Prime and the manufacturers of New Terra, but Yuna's economic analysis team worked out a solution that benefits both sides. Hana nodded with satisfaction. Dr. Yuna Choi had become the Council's leading expert on interspecies economics, helping different civilizations find ways to trade fairly despite having completely different resources and needs. What about the integration program? Tay asked. Ahead of schedule, Jin replied. Quan's teams have successfully adapted Velthari technology for use by 17 different species so far, and the reverse engineering projects are producing innovations that none of us could have developed alone. Quan Sio had revolutionized galactic technology by creating the first truly universal systems. Instead of each species being locked into